Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here with the Spartan Rocketry Club, looking to finish up our build of the Estes Mini Mean Machine. In the intervening time, I have put a clear coat spray paint over top of the decals and everything else with mostly good success. There was a little bit right here where my paint blistered a little bit. That usually happens for me because I put too much on in one coat. So something to be avoided. Probably can't see it. It's in the white, so it's actually a pretty good place to have a miscue. Anyway, the remaining things to be done in this video are to get the finishing, the recovery system installed. But one last thing to do before that, we need the glue, is to actually attach the coupling here into the uh, bottom part. So again, I did half of this last time, and I definitely wanted it to fully set up before I continue the process, since I'm basically just going to push um, that in here. The only risk here is that I've got glue, and the rocket is essentially finished now, so I really don't want any glue to get out, but that shouldn't be a concern. I'm going to be pushing the glue down, if anything. So there we go. Just pushed it together. Um, that's that's it. Rocket's built. The last thing that needs to be done, though, is, as I mentioned, the recovery system. So most of the rocket's going to go way over here, and I need to remove the nose cone. And I put a little bit of painter's tape here on it when I was building it, or when I was painting it, rather, not to like protect it or anything, but because the fit wasn't very good. It's actually quite snug now. So I don't know. I might leave this on. It's not hurting anything, and you don't want it to be really, really tight. But um, if you have it very loose, it can make the ejection charge less effective, and that's something to be avoided. So I guess I'm going to leave it on. There's no reason not to, I guess. But we do need the nose cone part off for the remaining steps. Here's a parachute. This parachute, I don't know, it's either 6 inches or 9 inches. It is not a serious parachute. Um, and honestly, it's not going to add a whole lot to the rocket here. It's so small, it's going to be hard for it to fully deploy. And it's not going to do much when it is deployed. So just out of curiosity, let's see. It's looks like it's 10 inches, 9 or 10, or 5 inches across. I guess that's not too bad. I've had 6-inch parachutes, which are just like absolutely ridiculous. They do as close to nothing as you could possibly get. It's essentially a streamer at that point. And that being said, you probably could fly this with a streamer rather than a parachute and get similar results. But we have the parachute, so I guess we might as well use it. I'm going to break out one of my barrel swivels. So I actually have a bunch of these really, really small ones. And this one might not be a terrible place to use one, but honestly, they're hard to work with. This size that I have, I want to say it's like number 4. I don't remember. Pretty sure I mentioned it. The actual size in another one. This is about as small as I really want to use, because otherwise it's really hard to thread through the eye. And the clasp is actually problematic too, because the clasp needs to be big enough to go around whatever anchor point you have in parachute, or in the nose cone. All right, so I've gathered up the threads. I'm going to narrow them down so I can get them through the eye. There we go. Spread them back apart, make a loop, and then just push the swivel up through. And oops, there we go. Carefully pull it tight. Clasp. There we go. Opens. And there it goes onto the nose cone. The nice thing about using one of these, even if it's not really necessary, is that it allows you to swap out parachute easily. So, there we go. So I don't have a lot of parachutes this size. Should I need one, like I burned through a parachute on the range and I want to fly it again, but no parachute, You can remove one from another kit you have if you have a clasp like this quite easily. You don't have to worry about untangling, untying any knots. You just need to unclasp and reclasp. So that's a nice thing to have. And yeah, this, I don't know. I don't think this is going to do a whole lot, but it's better than nothing, I guess. So off to the side that goes. The other thing we need to do is install the shock cord. This is a classic Estes shock cord mounting application. So we've got this trapezoid shape and instructions. Cut it out. Really, you could do this with just any old piece of paper. I mean, I certainly have. I've just cut a rough trapezoid shape and then kind of eyeballed where the various lines would be. So probably seen me do this before. If you've watched any of my videos, it is a very straightforward process. A little bit of glue in section number 2. The shock cord then you lay up to about the line for between number 1 and number 2, and then fold number 1 over onto number 2. I tend to use way more glue than I really need in this part, but you don't really need very much. If you use extra, it's just going to squirt out, something to be avoided. Once you've folded it over and you've squished it tight, then put a little bit of glue into section 3, and I've put the glue directly onto the shock cord this time. Doesn't really make much of a difference. Fold it over again, squish it flat. You can do this in your hands too. And then I'm actually got a little bit of glue on my hands, so I'm going to get rid of that. I usually put the shock cord and the parachute in after the paint is dry. Everything's done. This is the last step. The downside to that, the upside to it, is you can take the nose cone off. You can take the rocket apart. It's not really a big deal, and you don't have to worry about protecting the shock cord from the paint. The downside is that you have to be a little bit careful so that you don't get any glue on your finished paint job, because that would be unfortunate. But that usually isn't an issue. I am going to be, as I said, careful about not getting any glue on my fingers, because that's how the glue would end up on the outside of the rocket. Probably not from the mount itself, probably from me being clumsy. So my hands are clean. I'm going to carefully bend this so that I don't touch the outsides, which I got a little bit of glue right there on the nose cone, or where the nose cone is going to attach. That was from the shock cord, but it's pretty inconsequential. All right, so it's in there. This is a narrow tube, so the best I can do is use my pinky here, and I'm going to push. I pushed it down as far as I can, and now I'm pushing down, squishing the mount against the body tube as far in as I can go. The deeper in you go, the better. But because the tube's so narrow, most of my fingers don't fit. So my little finger or bust. All right, that's enough. I'm just checking to make sure that it is as flat as I can get it at this point. It should be pretty well set. Take a peek. Yeah, it looks pretty good. All right. Last thing then, and this kit is basically ready to fly, is I have to tie the shock cord into the nose cone. That shouldn't be all that difficult. Now, flying this shouldn't be very hard to fly. It's a pretty straightforward rocket, right? It's a arrow shape, it's got fins, all that stuff. The tricky part about flying something this sized is that the body tube is pretty narrow. So I'm going to trim off my excess here because I want as little stuff in here as possible. So there are a couple things. One, I might actually have to remove the clasp and put it back on, because my shock cord, the knot in it is kind of pointed up. I probably can't do much about that, other than I guess I could twist it like that. That's probably good. It looks like it's going to fit pretty flush. All right, so let's just pack it for now. Again, like I said, the trick is that there's not much space to work with in there, so you have to do a decent job of tying the knot, making it fairly thin. Usually I would do a Z-fold here, but I don't think I have the space for it, so I'm just going to fold it over once. And you don't want the shroud lines tight, but I need them close to the body here so they don't end up taking up too much space. And that looks like that should fit in without any real trouble. Now I'm not actually going to pack this now because the glue is still dry. I'm going to wait until, or the glue is still wet. I'm going to wait until it's actually dry, so a few hours from now, but that should be it. This is also one I typically don't use wadding. I use the cellulosic insulation, which is colloquially known as dog barf in the industry. Um, that stuff's dirt cheap and it's very effective. I actually think it's easier to use most of the time, but getting any decent amount of the insulation into this narrow tube is going to be difficult. So this one's actually one I will fly with actual wadding. Just be careful with that too. There's not much space in here, so the wadding you got to crumple it up so that it can easily get blown out when the ejection charge goes off. All right, so that takes care of this build. I actually finished it before the other kit I was working on as kind of an interlude. So that's it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in whatever happens to be the next video sequence series. See you then.